What do CEOs need to know about sales these days? A lot. Outdated sales strategies and tactics plague most companies today. Listen to what innovative CEOs and experts have to say about how to change all that with Sales Talk for CEOs. Welcome to Sales Talk for CEOs. It's just me again today. I have a topic that I know a lot of CEOs have on their mind. And that is, what are sales leaders supposed to be doing today? Like, what do they do? What does that look like? How do we get peak performing teams? All right, well, let's start with this. We have layers of sales leadership at some companies, and at some companies, we're really flat. But the thing to really focus on is the sales leaders who directly manage your sellers, right? Who are managing the sellers that are out in the field doing the work. They're on the phones, they're writing the emails, they're going to the trade shows, they're visiting with customers, they're working with prospects to close deals, right? These are the people who make or break it. The problem is we put too much pressure and too much weight on those sellers, and we need to release some of that and lift it up to the sales leadership. Now, many of the companies that I work with, there's a CEO and a sales leader and some salespeople, or a couple of sales leaders and some salespeople. There's not a lot of other layers, but sometimes you have a VP of sales with several sales leaders who manage the salespeople underneath. And sometimes you have an even bigger organization where you have a chief revenue officer who has some sales directors or sales VPs reporting into them. And those sales VPs sometimes have regions, and they have region leaders, and then the sellers. When you're getting into organizations that big, it gets even harder. But the job of the sales leaders, all of them, no matter what their title, is to ensure that salespeople can do their job and that our customers have a great experience. And if we're not focused on that, we're focused on the wrong things, right? Because it's not about closing deals, right? It's not about enablement. It's not about leads. It's not about any of those things. They all add up to a great customer experience. So we've got to stay focused on what are the leaders doing to help the sellers who are directly interacting with the people who buy from us to have a great experience. And I think that in the past, a lot, the sales leadership has been focused on internal things and not so much focused on the customer or the customer experience. So we want to flip that. And the sales leadership should be asking every day, what are we doing to make it easier to be our customer and harder to be our competitor? Right? What are we doing to make it easier to be our customer? That means we're providing a great customer experience from hello to I'm your loyal customer. So when the sales leaders look at training, when they look at enablement, when they look at sales ops, when they look at lead generation, demand gen, all of those things, the question should be, is this making it easier to be our customer? How does this impact the customer experience? And if that comes first, all the rest works better. So with that in mind, let's talk about what a sales manager, the person who's out there managing the actual sellers, should be doing today to get peak performance. So you probably think I'm going to start talking about what they should do for the sellers. But actually, I'm going to talk about what they need to communicate to leadership first. So what is my role in this organization as a sales leader, a person who manages sellers? And what do I need to do my job well? I need to communicate that up. If I report directly to the CEO, it goes there. If I have a leader that's a director or VP, I need to communicate it there. I also need to communicate it across the other people who have that same position as me. We need to talk about that. What do we need to be successful today? What do we need in order to make sure that customers have an exceptional experience? Do we need tools? Do we need training? Do we need support from leadership? What is it that we need? And that needs to be built out first so that the foundation for supporting what the sellers do every day is there. And then things become a lot easier. So, yes, of course, your sellers need training. They need coaching. They need tools. They need pipeline reviews, right? They need one to ones. They need all of these things with customer experience in mind. Now, I'm talking a lot about customer experience here because it's really important, but we can't have great customer experience without great employee experience. And that's why I say that the sales leader who manages those sellers has to start with themselves. What do they need? How can they improve? How do they get better at what they do? How do they fit into this organization? How do they communicate with their peers? How do they communicate up? How do they build that foundation with their senior team? All of those things make great employee experience, and it makes it possible for them to give their sellers a great employee experience. And this then trickles out to the customers, and they get a great customer experience. So that's why it's so important. Now, when we look at what these managers do every single day, they may have 5 or maybe up to 10. I hope not. That's a lot, but maybe between 5 and 10 sellers that report directly to them that they are managing, right? Because they have to make sure that people just simply come to work and do their jobs, the managing part, right? Get the benefits that they need, all of those things. But they also need to coach them, and that means continuously helping them improve in what they're doing. And they also need to lead them. They need to inspire them and they need to motivate them. So it's a big job, the sales leader job. And I don't think most people really recognize how big it is. And part of the reason is because we keep our sales managers really busy doing reporting and attending meetings and doing a lot of managerial things that don't really help our salespeople give our customers an exceptional experience. So we really have to change our mindset as the CEO of a company. What is your mindset around this? Does it need to change so that everything can improve? So if you have sales leaders out there today who you look at their calendar and they are busy with reporting and meetings and a lot of things that take them away from working with sellers, you've got to change that immediately. Because when you want a peak performing team, your sales leader has to spend 80% of their time coaching the salespeople to close business. That's what they have to be focused on. Now, again, with customer experience in mind. So that means their days need to be set up very specifically so that they have time with each of their sellers. They have time to work with their sales team on actual strategies, account strategies on how to land big accounts, but also how to expand big accounts. So they've got to really be expert in that. And they've got to help their sellers to work these plans, figure out what resources are needed, what team members are needed. Because remember, selling's a team sport, right? So they're going to need other members. So they are really becoming orchestrators of internal resources. They also need to be very specific about these strategies and when senior leadership is needed in these strategies. You've probably heard me talk about this before, but the senior leadership is so crucial to landing really big accounts or expanding in really big accounts. A lone seller can't do it by themselves anymore. Even with a subject matter expert and maybe a customer success person, that's not enough. We need sponsorship at the leadership level. So that sales leader should be orchestrating that as well. Hey, I need the senior vice president of, I need our CFO, I need our CEO to come right to these important meetings or to come to the strategy session, and then make sure that those senior people are positioned properly with the customer to help advance the deal, right? Because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to sell stuff. So how whether it's an existing customer expanding or whether it's a brand new customer, sometimes we need that CEO confidence in there. So that sales manager should know when to bring that in. So that's a really important job that I think gets missed constantly. I mean, sellers are like, "Oh, hey, can we get the CEO on a call?" A lot of times the sales leader just says flat out no, or like, "Oh, sure." And then we just wing it. No, we need to make sure that we do account strategies. There's a plan. We know who the people are. We know what's going to happen next. We know the approach. And then we can say to the CEO or a senior leader, we'll need your help. We're positioning you with this person. Here's why. Here's what we want you to do. Here's what we want you to say. Right. And we plan ahead for all of that. So sales leaders have to be deeply involved in making that all happen. But sales leaders also need to be really skilled at recognizing what salespeople do well and what they don't, so they can provide the development that the salespeople need. And it's ongoing. One training once a year or twice a year is just simply not enough. We have to have ongoing development, and the sales leaders must provide that. So that's another important role. They have to assess these salespeople, and they have to ask the salespeople for input on what they know how to do well, what they need to do better, and then they need to put together these development plans and then ensure that they're happening so that the salespeople keep developing. Like, what are your salespeople reading about sales? They should be reading something about sales every month. What podcasts are they listening to about sales? Right? What blogs are they reading about sales? Like, we have to be learning all the time. We have to have this deep curiosity, right? To learn more about what we do and how we do it, to learn more about the industry, to learn more about the customers. So the sales leader has to drive all of that as well. And then the sales leader needs to be really good at deal coaching, because deals are getting stalled at a higher rate than ever before. And so many deals are ending in no decision. So these sales leaders need time to coach these deals and do it well. Not just, oh, tell me about that deal. How's it going? Oh, great, great. Well, that's good. All right. Or, oh, it's stalled. Okay. Well, what do you think you should do? Well, I don't know. Okay. No, much deeper than that. It has to be where the sales leader is laying it out with the salesperson and the selling team. They're mapping it out somehow. They're looking at all the players. They're looking at how the players are interacting with the solution and what they think about it, using something like strategic selling, where they can do a blue sheet and map that out completely, right? The leaders have to be really good at this deal coaching. And then finally, they have to be really good at coaching the pipeline, or the funnel, as I call it, right? So we have a list of all of our opportunities and the stages that they're in some sort of CRM. And they have to start looking at these pipelines in a different way. They've got to look at the whole pipeline, and then they need to look at each stage of the pipeline, right? So that they can truly understand it. And then they can coach the sellers on what to do. Now, out of those pipeline reviews, you're going to do some real account strategies or some deal reviews, right? You're going to do some win loss reviews. There's lots of things that will come from that, but the sales leaders have to be really good at it. So if you're sitting around thinking, oh my gosh, what do my sales leaders do all day? You need to ask them. And then maybe you even need to shadow them, or somebody in your company, if it's not you, the CEO, maybe their leader, right? And and figure out what they're doing versus what they should be doing, and make sure that they're on pace to do the right things so that they can have a peak performing team. And then lastly, who's coaching these leaders, right? So you've got sellers in the field, and they've got a leader who's supposed to be coaching them. Hopefully they are. And if they don't know how, that's something you have to work on, right? Getting your leaders to know how to coach. But who's coaching them? Who's making their development plan? Who's making sure they become a better leader? They're constantly learning. They're curious, right? Who's doing that? If they report directly to you as the CEO, you probably don't have time to coach them. So you may want to bring in a coach to do that. But if you have a sales leader, like a VP of sales or a CRO, some other leadership that your sales managers report into, that person should be providing some coaching and making sure that these leaders are developing continuously, not again, training once or twice a year, but every week they're learning something new. They're reading something, they're listening to something, they're doing something to improve their leadership skills, to improve their coaching skills, to improve deal coaching, to improve account management strategies, to improve the way they review the pipeline. There's always something to learn. And we have to make time to do that. We have to ensure that our sales leaders are doing that and that they're ensuring their salespeople are doing that, and that these sales leaders can set their day up to make sure they have time to work with salespeople in a way that advances each individual seller's skills and develops them as a human, as a leader, as a seller, and that they have time to coach all of the deals, whether they're deals in the pipeline or doing individual deal coaching or account strategies. They have to have time to do those things if you want a peak performing sales team. So, again, if this is something that you're wondering about or not sure if it's happening at your company, I'm happy to chat with you about it. One of my favorite things to talk about sales leadership. So, please feel free to email me or give me a call, and I'd be delighted to talk it through with you. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.